Last week, I've finally been able to release an article which has been a huge project of mine over the last several weeks. It is the Juggernaut Kog'Maw, Baiting with the ADC, hosted by LiquidLegends.net. And it is by far my best work and my most popular work to date. So what this article is, it's an incredible in-depth look at what makes the Juggernaut Kog'Maw the Juggernaut Kog'Maw, as opposed to other cog positions that we've seen before, defining what it actually is and trying to build up a bit of a historical context to it, which I've faltered in a couple aspects on, but I ultimately hit the nail on the head. I got all the incredibly relevant points concerning the composition and I set up the argument fairly nicely. So this is by far my most popular work and also my best work. A huge shout out to the Liquid Legends staffs for hosting this work, for first off giving it the style that it has. It's just a great style. It just looks fantastic. It just fits so well. Pictures that were also implemented by some other staff members are just adorable. They added to like a little cute factor for the article. The GIF setup as well to just illustrate my points incredibly efficiently, just to let people see what it is all about and just like bring the analysis to life, was also something I don't know if I can do with GoPretend.com. The article, as I'm looking at it right now, has since broken 100,000 views and spent at least 12 hours on the Reddit front page as of yesterday, and a lot of people loved it. A lot of people really liked it, and I'm really happy for that. I knew that this article, just because of what it talked about, could have the potential to be like to get a lot of views in it, because people want to know what exactly is the Juggernaut Kog'Maw, what does it all mean, how does it operate, what makes it different, what makes it so unique. And I don't think anyone before myself has ever gone into what really makes it unique. We kind of had like discussions about it, but no one's ever given a piece of work to showcase it until this point. So if I hosted this with GoPretend, there would be a lot more opportunities to kind of like get some increased return for me on it, but it would not have gotten as much exposure had I done it with GoPretend, because I simply wouldn't have utilized the resources that Liquid Legends offered. So thank you guys for offering that to me. I appreciate all of it. Checks and everybody at the staff for Liquid Legends helping me out, and especially John Galt for his incredible work on the style for it. So let's go ahead with all that discussion and preset up. Let's look at what I'm going to talk about with the Juggernaut composition. Okay, we're going to start with kind of follow the article beat by going through like the historical narrative of what's going on, and then we're going to get into like what makes this important. Okay, because on the surface, when you look at the champion picks, the Juggernaut Kog'Maw, or Juggernaut, I'm just going to start saying that now, as a Juggernaut comp it basically looks like a form of the protect the AD carry composition, but it's completely different from that in terms of play style, even though it can operate as both actually. So I'm going to distinguish between what a protect the ADC carry style approach is versus what a Juggernaut style approach is, because I think that calling the Juggernaut comp a composition is actually incorrect. It's more accurately defined as a play style when you look at the elements that are at work in it. After that, we're going to look at what makes it tick, so like the factors of Lulu and KogMaw, the two main pieces of it. You can't really have the Juggernaut without either of them. And then what makes, how do we go about defeating this comp, or the weaknesses of this comp, just so that we can kind of look at what teams, should they allow another team who can play the Juggernaut composition well, get through picks and bans, either just because, for whatever reasons we'll get into. We have to look at how to defeat it in case you're up against it. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to have to refresh my memory, so I actually have my own article pulled up. It's like, what did I write again? So, protect the AD carry composition is the basis for the Juggernaut composition, okay? But it's an innovation on the playstyle. So, if you were to go through and define the like main team compositions, okay, within League of Legends in terms of playstyle, so like what are the win conditions for these teams and how do you play that out? You'd get like a couple answers, and they've been around for years. You have like a huge team fighting comp, so like the Wombo combo. I guess it would be like Season 1 with like a Mumu, Malphite, Ashe, where you just hard chain CC forever on the enemy, and you just like constantly lock them down, and it's about like, oh, the big ults overlapping and like the huge engage followed up one spell after another. You kind of have like that huge Wombo combo team fight. You have split pushing comps where the teams actually don't want to group up. They want to, like have the strong duelist in a side lane putting pressure on your tower. An old school example would be use of Tryndamere in the top lane. A more recent example would be Zed in the mid lane. If you look at SK of Europe, they're actually a team which frequently does a 1-3-1 split push style. So you have one champion in top, three champions in mid, one champion in bottom lane, and you're applying pressure like that. How well they play it varies from game to game, but that's the overall style which they use. For a modern example. You'd get also poke compositions, so like like recently we have like Jin Air with like using Xerath compositions, and Corki as an ADC, and you're just basically trying to harass the enemy down. Nidalee and Jace are huge champions for the compositions, historically speaking. Then you have Protect the AD Carry compositions, or PADC, and the fact that people are starting to use that abbreviation PADC in discussions on Reddit and elsewhere is just like, yes, I'm defining terminology. I've done it, kids. Moving on from the jokes, protect the AD carry. The goal follows this. You basically put all of your resources into a hyper carry. So an ADC which has a little weaker early game, but has a huge scaling into the late game. You know, champions that are like iconic of this. Kog'Maw, obviously. Vayne probably is one of like the more notorious hyper carries just because of the flashy Vayne plays. Twitch, Jinx in recent game. Old school Tristana, don't know how well she actually scales now that she's been nerfed in the way that she has. But the goal of that is you're going to keep that guy alive, okay? And you're going to pump your resources into them, you're going to buff them, you're going to shield them, you're going to heal them, and then they're going to carry the game for you, okay? Usually when you do these kind of compositions, or historically I should say, you're going to have a lot of peel, and basically that AD carry is your only damage source, okay? This is one point where my article actually misses. I'm going to implement that right now. Dignitas in Season 2 actually had a huge innovation with Protect the AD carry compositions running. I think it was like a solo lane Raka, or maybe just Raka support, like Soraka, Lulu, Janna. I can't remember. I think it was Kog'Maw. It might have been Kog'Maw. My brother actually looked at the games for me. Nunu. Yeah, they had Lulu top, Raka mid, support Janna, and an ADC, which is there. I don't know which one it is, but they were one of the first teams to pioneer this playstyle of we're going to have all these support champions playing in solo lanes, getting solo XP, and then we're just going to protect this one guy in our team who's going to auto-attack you to death. That's like the premise of the composition, okay? Type A assassins would actually bust out like a 4 would use a variation of this composition style in Season 4 by running a 4 support and 180 carry. They had Nunu jungle, Tark support, Lulu top, and Janna mid, and Vayne ADC, and they would actually protect in this game. They did this in the regular season, and it's like one of the more noticed games within history. It's got a lot of views on YouTube, stuff like that. This is a game where they busted out once, they never used it again, they never played it during Worlds. They kind of just did this one-time thing, and they used it against the second place Taiwanese team, SGS. I can't remember. Singapore Sentinels, that was it. And so that's like one of the more notorious examples of the Juggernaut composition within like more recent memory. Season 2, though, Dignitas is by far the more prominent historical example because it is remarked as like the innovation of that particular style of play. So then in more recent memory, so like Season 4, okay, if you had to pick a team which was like iconic of a Protect the AD Carry style approach, you'd get Starhorn Royal Club with Uzi I in the Protect the Puppy comp as China LOL experts, or people who we perceive as, so like Kelsey, Froscura, and people who we perceive as China LOL experts or claim to be. You know, you can debate either way. I think they are. They would remark it as Protect the Puppy. And so all Uzi I, he would get all the farm. He would like then try to hard carry the game hard carry his team on his back. He was like the best player on that team. I mean, that was what Uzi I's shtick was. So, but if you look at Starhorn Royal Club's example, okay, is that they were able to force their way through pretty much. They beat EDG and OMG in the best of 5 series, but both series went to Game 5. Then they went up against Samsung Light, and they lost to them 3-1 in the final. So it kind of suggests that while you need a really good ADC to win with a Protect the ADC carry comp, because that guy has to be good because he's actually trying to win the game for your team. Even if you have like one of the best players in the world, you're still like a rung below like a really dominant team who has like strong jungle, strong support, you know, really strong AD carry, like just like a strong lineup in general. You know, one guy can't beat 5 effectively if they're like relatively in the same skill level. So what it suggested that you can be an elite level team, but you're rung below like the real elite, or like the elite of the elite, I guess we could say. So there's that for you. So Protect the AD carry composition styles, you generally focus on peel, shields, heals, and it's all about protecting that guy. And the AD carry is trying to be way far in the back, because if he dies, the composition is dead. There's no winning with that. Then comes Season 5 and the GE Tigers in I want to say week 2 of the LCK. They lock in Kog'Maw with Lulu top. And they begin to do something very interesting, and I think they were actually playing against CJ at the time. Let me look. No, they were playing against Jin Air. This was game 2 against Jin Air within the first couple weeks of the LCK, their first meeting with Jin Air. They locked in Kog'Maw and Lulu, and then Prey does this very interesting thing where he baits in Trace, Jin Air's top laner, onto him by stepping a little too close, and like he runs up in front of him with Lulu and he pulls on in, and then in fact he starts an entire team fight by just running at Jin Air and then falling back, and he lives for quite a long time. He does die near the end of it, but he does so much damage in there that Kuro as LeBlanc is able to clean up it. Okay, then 2 weeks later against KT Rolster, they once again Prey's on Kog'Maw and Smeb is on Lulu, and Prey is running at the enemy front line again with Lulu Whimsy, Lulu Shields, and he's just attacking them like under their tower. Like he's just running. He doesn't give a shit. He's not playing in the back far away like hiding behind his team. He's up at the front line, single-handedly harassing KT Rolster, like off of towers. He's hitting them, he's chunking all them out, and it's just like, what are we watching here? Doa makes a quip about watching this Juggernaut Kog'Maw, this frontline Kog'Maw, and then pretty soon the terminology Juggernaut soon falls. I don't know who actually came up with it, but after Doa makes that remark, Doa and Monte Cristo begin to use the terminology Juggernaut. That's where like this name comes from for this particular playstyle, okay? And that's like the innovation of it, okay? So, if you look at the pairing of Lulu and Kog'Maw, this is where we're going to take a moment to define what the Juggernaut Kog'Maw is. If you look at the pairing of Lulu and Kog'Maw, this is not the first time we've ever seen it. This has been used fairly recently. In fact, if you look at Season 4 Worlds, I had one guy who told this to me before the article came out, that, you know, GE didn't invent the composition because they weren't the first guys to play Lulu with Kog'Maw. Well, yeah, you're right. They're not the first ones to do that, but they're the first to use it in this way. And if you look at like Season 4 Worlds in the group stages, Fnatic versus Samsung Blue, the first game where Samsung Blue played this comp actually. At least, yeah, it was Samsung Blue. And then LMQ versus OMG, I want to say game 2 when LMQ were running Lulu and Kog'Maw. Okay, so they ran these two, but if you look at the compositions in terms of what they ran in the mid lane, which we'll get into in a moment, why that's important, that is, and how they use Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw is positioned in the back. He's almost never up at the front line. Lulu spells are all going onto like the front line engage, on the initiators to make them, to amplify their engage, to make them a little more tankier. Kog'Maw is rarely shielded in these fights because he's never positioned in a place where it's like going to be applicable to use those things, where it's going to be beneficial, I should say. So, when you look at those playstyles, okay, you want to, and if you say, okay, if the Juggernaut Kog'Maw is the composition which has Lulu top, Kog'Maw mid, GE didn't do shit. But it's not exactly a composition, it is a playstyle of composition, okay? If you look at how Protect the AD Carry operates, and then what the GE Tigers did in those games I mentioned, they're completely different goal sets. Protect the AD Carry, Kog'Maw should be in the back, no one should be touching him. GE Tigers, Kog'Maw, you're the front line. Go at him, boy. Yeah, that's right. Spit all over him. It's like, what the hell is that positioning? But it works, and it's incredibly powerful. It's powerful at sieging, it's powerful at poking. It's a really good combination, actually, and Kog'Maw just sustains through it. So that's where we have to get in to define what the Juggernaut Kog'Maw really is. And my definition kind of comes up with this thing, okay, is you have to look at what Doa and Monty are actually talking about when it comes to what they mean by Juggernaut. Okay, Doa makes the quip of seeing a frontline Kog'Maw as the Juggernaut Kog'Maw, not the pairing of Lulu and Kog'Maw. Okay, and even though it is Lulu that enables Kog'Maw to be the front line. So we actually have to look at it and say, okay, what the Juggernaut Kog'Maw is. It is not a composition, but rather it is a composition in League of Legends which utilizes a solo lane Lulu to buff Kog'Maw, an ADC Kog'Maw, so he can proactively move at the front line of the team, either baiting engages or harassing the enemy. That is what Juggernaut actually is. It is that playstyle, that use of Lulu spells to enable Kog'Maw to play at the front line and be that aggressive. That is what it is. That is what we are referring to. Not Lulu Kog'Maw. Not Lulu Kog'Maw on the same team, because you can play completely different styles, okay? So, if you look at the game, the second game of Team Liquid versus CLG, when Team Liquid busted out the Juggernaut composition, okay, you actually see, like, the difference in play styles in terms of it, okay? At the start of the game, because Piglet isn't hitting his power spikes just yet, he's playing in the back, okay, dominating, zoning up the front line, and all of Quasa's spells are going on to Nunu. There's a dragon fight at 20 minutes, actually, where they really emphasize this point. So, Team Liquid is playing a Protect the AD Carry style right there. Then, at 29 minutes, after Team Liquid gets a huge lead over CLG, and they have Baron buff, then suddenly Piglet is actually approaching CLG. He's in front of Dominate. He's harassing the enemy CLG under their tower, attacking them with all those shields. And with Lulu's shields and Kog'Maw healing with his Blade of the Ruined King on his damage, he's able to sustain the damage and take poke with no damage coming back to him. That's the power of this composition, is that you have this really defensive playstyle, which is time proven to work, and then you have this really aggressive siege style, which there's not much you can do against it, because it's like if you engage on Kog'Maw, okay, he's going to have a whole bunch of shields and peels, and he's going to kite back. And there's also the aspect within this composition of a secondary damage threat. In Protect the AD Carry compositions, you usually have everybody protecting the ADC. So in the mid lane, you have like a supportive mid laner. You could do Orianna. Lulu, you could also play as mid, and then you have like a tanky top laner, and everyone is just trying to soak up damage peel for Kog'Maw. What the GE Tigers do, and what the Juggernaut playstyle works best with, though, is a clean-up mid laner. So you get someone like Corki mid in recent games. LeBlanc, Cassidy when he was good. You get these cleanup mid laners who can come on in and just wipe out the enemy team. He doesn't do anything to buff Kog'Maw. He has no interaction with Kog'Maw, but he does a lot of damage. And so when you do this, you have a secondary damage threat, which means there's less risk of having your Kog'Maw go up and bait these engages, because if the enemy team does focus him down, you have another carry who can just clean up. G Tigers in their first game against Juggernaut with it, they bait in and engage with Kog'Maw. He gets killed, and then Kuro as LeBlanc, he gets completely ignored in the fight, cleans it up, and gets a triple kill because everybody was focused on killing Kog'Maw. That's the function of the composition. You have to run a secondary damage threat. If you play Lulu mid, the composition only has one source of damage, and it's simply not enough in this meta because everybody's so tanky, so you need more damage rather than another like supportive front line, because and also it's more risky because if Kog'Maw dies, which it's possible for him to die, especially against some compositions, then you have no damage. So Lulu is therefore played in the top lane as a utility mage, and then you have a damage-focused mid laner who's there to clean up. Usually AP mid laner, simply because you need Kog'Maw's doing plenty of while he's doing a lot of hybrid damage, he's also primarily physical. So you kind of have to also have like that other damage source in there just to keep it up, because enemies will be building things like Frozen Heart against Kog'Maw, and so if you have an AD carry or an AD mid laner, excuse me, you're going to be in for a rougher time. Corki gets by though because he also does a lot of magic damage with his poke. So there you go. So that's like the difference in it. So Lulu and Kog'Maw, we got to talk about these 2 points because Lulu and Kog'Maw are both like the two factors which make up the Juggernaut composition. Okay, I would say that Kog'Maw's kit is actually like the chassis, like the frame of the composition, and then Lulu is the engine that keeps it running. In my article, I say Juggernaut. Kog'Maw's kit is the engine, but I think Lulu is more accurate because you simply cannot play Kog'Maw like this without Lulu. So with Lulu getting solo lane experience, solo lane farm, she's able to build a lot of AP that gives her increased movement speed on her Whimsy and bigger shields for Kog'Maw. So with the movement speed, Kog'Maw is able to move way up. He's able to move fast and dodge all these skill shots, and able to harass the enemy very quickly, and then you immediately kite back. With the shields, he's able to block a lot of incoming damage, and he also gets the picks on him to add more damage to his auto attacks. Okay, if you have a support like John or Nami, there's further application on his auto attacks with their shield, with Janna's shield and Nami's Tie-Collar Blessing, giving him an extra slow and magic damage on it. Okay. So that's like the fundamental part of it. And then Lulu can immediately go into a peel zone. She can also use Kog'Maw's forward positioning to launch out glitter lances at people. And her wild growth is also there to peel for him. And then Kog'Maw, in my belief, is the only ADC you can really play like this, okay? Because if you look at other hyper carries, because you need a hyper carry first off, because you need to have one that's going to scale into the late game and do a lot of damage, okay? Kog'Maw is the only one you can play like this and have this much siege potential because he has the most free range in the game. So if you look at other hyper carries who have a range amplifier, okay? So Twitch, Jinx, Tristana, is there another one? No, I can't think of one right now. Those are the only ones who have who have really massive range. Twitch's range boost is only on his ultimate, and it only lasts for like 7-8 seconds, and it's on like a minute and a half cooldown, and that's safe for team fights, so you can't just use Twitch like that. So Twitch doesn't operate as well as Kog'Maw does in this composition, and Twitch also lacks poke. Jinx is probably like the second best you could do with this because she has fish bones, but when she switches that rocket form, she loses a lot of attack speed because she doesn't have Pow Pow's buff on her, and her base attack speed is pretty crap. So you're missing out on a lot of damage there. And you don't have so many like spell resets with Kog'Maw, okay? And then Tristana, she needs levels to level up. Whereas Kog'Maw, once you get level 9 and you have your Bio Arcane Barrage maxed out, and so you have your max range at level 9, Tristana needs to wait to get to level 18 before she barely outranges Caitlyn now. So she's less effective with this composition, and she also doesn't have as much free spelling poke. If you look at Kog'Maw, he's got the most range. That range also gives him % health shred, so he's going to deal damage to you like pretty much regardless of what you have built up at this point. And he builds Triforce, so he's able to rip through towers, and he has a low, and that's because he has a low CD ultimate, which even though it consumes a lot of mana, he can always fire that at you and proc Triforce on your towers or onto you and deal even more damage. He also has a bit of a slow, so that if you get out positioned, he can slow you with that, get a couple extra autos in. He has an armor and MR shred, which is kind of negligible in all honesty. The W is the biggest part of his kit, though, because it lets him have the best range to harass you with, and so there's less risk of going in. You can start harassing people farther away from tower, you can hit them from farther away, and so there's less risk to you. If you put someone like Sivir up there, yeah, you can buff her like Lulu, you can send her to the front line, okay, but she doesn't have the same range. She has to get within 500 range, and that's a lot of engage ranges, and so it's more risky to use Sivir within that, even though she also has poke like Kog'Maw. Ezreal is also not an attack-based ADC, so even though he could throw a lot of pokes and stuff like that, he just doesn't have the same range as Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw's range is an important factor in this composition. And then one aspect of his kit that also helps with him is like his passive. So it's a bit of extra damage. If you do kill him, you get punished for it by taking true damage. So it minimizes some of the risk there. It's not like it makes the composition part like that. Somebody suggested it did, but I didn't mean to imply that. It's a peculiar part which gets underplayed, and it deserves to be underplayed. But it's also a factor there which further punishes the opponent for killing you. So there you go. That's like how the two interact with each other, okay? Furthermore, Kog'Maw's build path is also like facilitates this because again he does Triforce, so he's going to get more damage procs off of Sheen with his ultimate, how that works. And then with Blade of the Rune King second, he gets more % health damage, so he has incredible burst against tanky targets, so he's able to harass the front line, and he's able to sustain as well through any poke that does get through all those shields, and so he can just almost indefinitely siege forever unless he just burns out of mana by spamming too many ultimates. So that's that function of it. Alright, so now that's how the composition pretty much works. Let's go ahead and look at how we're going to defeat it. Because if you let it through pick and ban phase, you're going to have to find a way to combat it. So in pick and ban, easiest thing, ban Lulu. You can't play it. Lulu over Kog'Maw because Kog'Maw, without like the right kind of peel, he's very vulnerable to assassination attempts. So you can like deal with a Kog'Maw, but dealing with a Juggernaut is a little harder. So if you get rid of Lulu and get rid of that ability for the team to play it, then there's that. If you let Lulu through and they pick it, you could just counter-pick Kog'Maw and then build a comp around him, and then they have to kind of change their Lulu pick, especially if they're like building up towards like parts of the Juggernaut and then they don't lock Kog'Maw in, and then you take that away from him. And it's like, shit, we're building a Juggernaut, but we don't have Kog'Maw. What are we going to do? And then last thing you could do is pick a composition that has incredibly hard engage that just burns through everything, okay? So, if a team is playing Lulu mid with Juggernaut, you have a huge advantage simply because Lulu will not have teleport as a mid laner, so you can punish mispositionings of Lulu with Kog'Maw. One weakness of the comp is that Lulu has to be next to Kog'Maw, and she has to be buffing Kog'Maw in order for this to work out. So if you're able to like kill Lulu or kill Kog'Maw when the two are separated and continue to get those picks, then you're going to have a better time with it. And if you're able to have hard engage so that if Lulu isn't there and you can just engage on Kog'Maw, then that's going to be great. There's several examples of this within the professional scene, namely LCK. That's where I pull a lot of my examples from. So that's one weakness of the composition. So you have to like target the enemy when Kog'Maw is separated from Lulu, because without that, then that is there. And if a team is not pairing them, then they're playing the Juggernaut bad. Another weakness of the composition, okay, is that if you can focus Lulu at the start of a fight, get her to burn her spells, like especially Wild Growth, on herself or force it onto somebody else and not Kog'Maw to peel for him, and then switch focus to Kog'Maw once Lulu has those CDs and he doesn't have those extra sustains, he is still immobile and he doesn't have a lot of peel for himself. So if you can get the enemy team to burn peel for somebody else and then switch the focus to Kog'Maw and kill him, then you're in a better position as well. A really cool play, which KT did this against GE Tigers in Week 10 of the LCK in their third game, and this is the first time GE actually lose with the Juggernaut composition, is that they actually CC'd Lulu for like a brief moment, and then within the time span that she was stunned by a Sejuani ultimate, they killed Kog'Maw. It's a fucking beautiful thing to see. They start off with the Sivir ult engage, they run in, Sejuani immediately throws the ultimate onto Lulu. She's frozen. She's right next to Kog'Maw, but she's stunned, so she can't cast spells. And the entire team, then Maokai jumps onto Kog'Maw, and then everybody else just explodes him before the stun on Lulu wears off. It's a fucking beautiful play. But that takes a lot of precision to do, and I feel like only like really coordinated teams would be able to pull it off. But that is another approach that you can take, is CC Lulu so she can't cast spells, and then kill Kog'Maw fast before she can start to peel for that. And once again, like hit them while the enemy team is mispositioned around that. So in the laning phase, I feel like if you focus the Lulu, it's a little, you can punish that pick, get her like burn the teleports, keep her down so she doesn't build up so many items. She still is pretty good without those items simply because she has plenty of base stats, but if you can keep her down, it's going to hurt the Juggernaut. If you can camp Kog'Maw and keep him down as well, then you basically shut down the composition because Kog'Maw's not going to have the damage to do anything. A little hard to do because usually Kog'Maw's paired with like a peel-based support, so ganking that lane, just because there is so much disengage from it, will be a little more difficult, but it's definitely worth a shot. And another thing, though, with ganking Kog'Maw, though, is that Lulu could TP into the bottom lane if she has it up. So focusing Lulu, though, basically means that you're not going to be facing off against the Juggernaut combo because Kog'Maw is not going to run teleport. He's not going to go into the top lane. Like, come on. So I feel like that's another point of weakness in the composition. If you can keep one of them down really hard and make it so that they can't do anything with it, then you're going to be in a good spot. If you can keep Kog'Maw down, even though it's harder and more risky, then it's a bigger payoff. But keeping the Lulu down is definitely safer. Aside from that, this is the end of my video, guys. So thank you for watching this, listening to this. Please go read the article and check it on out. I know that this YouTube video is not going to get a whole lot of views with it. I honestly should have made this with the article so that people could see my channel, they could see me talk about this, and they could come up with it. But yeah, I just want to get the word out there. Want to get some going with the channel. I'm going to, like every work I do from now on, I'm going to make a video with it. And I'm going to try and do a little more humor-based stuff in the future. So keep an eye out for that. I'm just trying to figure out the format I want to approach with it. And on top of that, yeah, this has been a really proud moment for me as a writer. And I'm looking forward to expanding my horizon stuff. And I'm also just going to start writing for @esportsgo, excuse me, not esportsgo. .com, so expect to see some more of my works there, and it's going to be a pretty fun blast, and expect more composition breakdowns in the future, guys. So thank you for watching this. See the Mangaka, signing out.